Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another video. Now, this is going to be my pet control macro guide, I guess. Pet control is a very, very important part of all these pet classes in the game, and unfortunately, the default setup for pet control in all of WoW is not sufficient if you're really trying to get good at a class that does have a pet, and especially with Demonology or something like BM Hunter, where your pet is so integral to your playstyle, your DPS. It's very important to understand how you can kind of more efficiently utilize your pet and micromanage it to an extent to help actually optimize your DPS and your CC, all that kind of fun stuff. So I wanted to make a video specifically on this, and I'm going to go over first my macros, and then I'm going to go over some specifics when it comes to actual pet control. The pets do not all act the same. Your summoned Felguard does not act like your imps or your Tyrant. They all have kind of different interactions, and a lot of that stuff is not very known or well understood. So I wanted to make a video specifically kind of going through that. Now, first and foremost, let's go through some of the macros here that I have, the main macros that I have. I mentioned these in the arena guide video that I'd done. We have a fear and a pet command. Both are focus macros. If I have no focus up, they'll just act as if we can clear the focus here. So you see I'm hitting this Q button here. This will just fear my current target. But say I set a focus on this target and I'm still on this one, it will actually fear this mob over here. This is very, very important because, like I had mentioned in the arena video, if you have this for both your pet stun as well as your fear, you can be attacking this guy, your pet can be attacking this guy, you can go ahead and pet stun, and then you can fear off of that pet stun while you don't even have to change targets. This allows you to maximize your CC while also maintaining very high DPS. Very, very, very important. Once you can kind of get comfortable and familiar with using these two macros, you will notice a massive increase in your gameplay. I would argue that if you have a good understanding of your rotation and just general gameplay, using these macros can easily be the difference of getting to like 1600 rating if you're a more casual player to like 1800 rating. Being able to effectively use these, watching for the DRs on your off target that you're trying to CC in arena, and timing it and being able to chain these CCs is the biggest difference between low-rated teams and high-rated teams in my personal experience. So I highly recommend trying to get used to these. Give yourself a couple days playing with it and really focus on trying to, maximize your CC and make sure you're not overlapping CCs and things like that. And these two macros really help you do that, and they're really, really, really impactful. Now, a couple other ones that I have are pet passive. These are going to be a little bit off the screen, but I'll link them in the description. But we have a pet passive and the pet attack macro. Now, I have on my pet attack, these are actually bound to my mouse wheel. So you'll see if I scroll up, it goes forward. If I scroll back, it comes back. Scroll forward, scroll back, scroll forward. You get the idea, right? So this allows me a lot of just different interaction with my pet. I do have the charge set up on default. I do have my Legion Strike set up on default. I also have Legion Strike bound into my pet attack macro. So for example, if I'm not next to the target and I'm running away, I can just keep spamming my macro and it will spam Legion Strike over and over and over again. So those are just some little tricks, but that's very, very important. You want to make sure that you have pet assist / pet assist on your pet attack macro, because otherwise there's times where it will attack and it will like auto one time and then it will just go back on passive. So you want to make sure that on your attack macro, you have pet assist added into it, and that on your pet passive macro, it's just pet passive. And then when you go back, it's pet assist and pet attack in one macro. Again, I'll link those down below, but those are very important. I suggest binding those to two very easily accessible binds. Like I said, for me, it's mouse wheel up and mouse wheel down. This is the most efficient way that I've found to manage your pets in WoW. We'd played Hunter back in BFA. That was my main originally in the beginning of BFA, and I had to do the same thing, and it is completely game-changing once you get this down. Now, the other thing that's really important to mention here with Felguard specifically is your Felstorm by default is going to be on autocast. What will happen if you do this is it will start Felstorming right away when you send it in. And obviously this isn't ideal for a lot of reasons. You can break CC. You can be using your pet's Felstorm when it's just a single target and maybe, you're 5 seconds away from getting into a big AoE pull or something like that. So you want to make sure that this is unbound so doesn't have the little swirly markers around it. You want to also bind this separately. So for me, I have shift wheel up, shift mouse wheel up. is my pet's whirlwind. So you see if I hit it here, it'll just start whirlwinding. Now you want to make sure that you're aware of where your pet's positioning is when you do this. It requires you to be a little bit more attentive, and you can't just kind of like not focus on your pet at all. You really want to know where your pet is. But this is really important, because having this where you're binding it and you're using it intentionally yourself as basically an AoE cooldown that's not on your global cooldown is very important, because you can also chain this back to back with demonic strength. So you can send your pet in, for example, and say I pop all my cooldowns, I go ahead demonic strength, you see we have 3 seconds left, and then I can actually end up following that right back to back with another Fellstorm, giving me like 8 seconds of just massive AoE. So it's important to be able to use those intentionally and at very specific times and not have it auto cast. So I definitely suggest having this as its own separate keybind. You're not going to use it a ton, especially in PvP stuff, but you definitely want to have it as its own bind, not auto casting. Now, another big, really high impact, I would say that this is something I just did like a day ago, high impact macros are your curses. Now, I set up where I have basically, it's a mouse over macro, but if I have no mouse over target, it will cast on my current target. So for example, we're sitting here and I'm just DPSing like normal, and I want to put Curse of Tongues on this target. It just acts like normal, right? But say I want to put Curse of Tongues on this target and I don't want to switch targets, so I can be sitting here and then I can run up and I can hover over either this target. I can also hover over their frame here. So you see like I'm switching here with my cursor being on the actual frame. So this is when mouse over gets really effective. It's important. I think this is going to be a really impactful way, because if you were to try and have separate keybinds for arena targets for all your curses, it gets to being a ton of keybinds. So this is an easy way to have access to all your curses, be able to cast your curses really, really fast and really easily, and only having one keybind per curse to do it. This, I think, is going to be the most effective way for us to be able to utilize our curses easier in arena. So I definitely suggest trying this if you haven't yet. It's really great because if I'm like, say I'm sitting here and I'm attacking a healer, and then this is a warrior that's coming at me, I can go ahead and be like running away and cast my curse on him while keeping all my focus on the healer, watching for, you know, cast that I'm trying to kick or whatever it may be. So again, I'll link that down below, but these have been really, really, really huge. One other little trick that you guys might want to use, I actually had taken this off, but this was something I did early on, was macroing my petattack into some of my main spells. So it would be, for example, like /cast Shadowbolt /petattack. You can do this if you're not super comfortable with micromanaging your pet. This is what I would suggest to do to kind of get used to it and try and help ensure high uptime with your pet. But once you start getting more familiar with the spec, I would say that there are plenty of times where I'm wanting to cast a Shadow Bolt here and I'm wanting to leave my pet on this target because I know I'm about to hard swap back to this target, or maybe this target is where the AoE is. So I want to be casting, I want to send my pet in there, and then in between my casts, I can move my pet over here if I wanted to, right? So I can do that. I can send my pet over to this one. You see what I'm saying? I can stay DPSing here. And then if I want my pet to come back, I can send him on this one in between my casts. And that gets a little bit micromanagey, but it ends up being the way that you really want to be effectively making sure your pet is in the right location and doing the right things to make sure that you're maximizing your damage. The last, I think, kind of macro that I'm sure most of you guys are pretty familiar with are just big kind of cooldown one-shot type macros. I generally have these macroed into abilities that I'm going to use right after my Tyrant, because if you cast it at the beginning of the Tyrant for the first 1.7 seconds, as that's the cast time of Tyrant, you're not actually utilizing all of those buffs. And so you don't necessarily want to cast it at the beginning of Tyrant, because Tyrant does not snapshot. So you want to have as much of your buffs, your trinkets, your Blood Fury, all your on-use type stuff, you want to have that active during the entire Tyrant window. It will not snapshot. So you want to make sure, like, for example, here, I have a macro that's going to do Hand to Gul'dan. It's going to do my on-use trinket, and it's going to use Blood Fury. I want to use that immediately as soon as my Tyrant cast finishes so that I can have all of that bonus intellect for those 15 seconds during my Tyrant. So for example, you'll see we'll go in here. I'll go ahead and cast my whatever Felguard, and then we go immediately right after that. So my Tyrant pops up. Its first cast, I have Blood Fury. I have the badge up, and it's doing a ton of damage because it's buffed for that duration. Again, Tyrant does not snapshot, so it's important to understand that you want to have a burst macro, but not necessarily tie it in to your Tyrant, which would arguably be your big burst cooldown. Now, the last thing to talk about here is how your pets function in their targeting. Now, we've talked a good amount here about the Felguard, and that's pretty straightforward as far as how that works. Your imps and your Tyrant have a different way in which they function in the game. Your imps, I don't know if it'll let me do it here. Let me see if I can get out of combat. If, for example, the target you're on dies, or you're in between trash pulls, or whatever it may be, your imps and your Tyrant will not start attacking a new target until you have actually started attacking it. Now, the way this works is you can see if I start casting Shadow Bolt, they don't do anything. Once the cast finishes is when they actually will start casting. In PvP, this can obviously be problematic, as a lot of times you're not able to get a cast off for a while. So you don't necessarily want to just be waiting for your Shadow Bolt, and you need to be aware of if your Tyrant's not attacking a target, or if your imps are just standing there doing nothing because they don't know who to attack. But instant cast abilities will change this. You'll see if I run up, if I cast a Curse of Weakness, my imps start attacking right away. Another ability that also works similarly is Soul Strike. So if you have imps out, let's build up some shards. I'll summon some imps. If you have imps out, though, you can actually Soul Strike the target, and the Soul Strike will do the same thing, and your imps will start attacking immediately once the Soul Strike completes. So we'll see they're on passive, right? They're not attacking anything. And I go ahead and I Soul Strike this. You can see they all start casting. Okay, so those are a few tricks as far as the pet management. Your Tyrant functions the exact same way as the imps do. If for some reason they stop attacking, or you're in between target dies or whatever, you want to basically swap to your next kill target and apply a curse, or use some kind of instant attack. Demon Bolt would do the same thing. Anything quick to get your pets focusing on the right target so that you're maximizing their uptime, and then start casting things like Shadow Bolt and Hand of Gul'dan. You want to try and make sure your pets are attacking during that time, and you're not wasting that 1.5 or 2 seconds hard casting an ability, and they're just sitting there while you're in the middle of your cast. So hopefully this helps, guys. Let me know, like always, if you have any questions, leave them down in the comments below, and I will try and get to all the questions that I can and help clarify anything that I might not have done a good job explaining in this video. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.